the Grammys. You love them if they pay you, and you hate them if you're anybody else. Now today, we are going to be looking at every Best Rap Album winner in the history of the Grammy Awards. And we're going to be looking at the Best Rap Album winner, as we can't even look at the Album of the Year winner, because, when a generational body of work like To Pimp a Butterfly or My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy comes out, hip-hop never wins them. We just give them to another generic pop album. I mean, we saw it the other night when a generational, genre-changing album like Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, it lost, and it didn't just lose to any other album. It lost to Harry's House, the album that starts off with the most generic song of all time with music for a sushi restaurant, which, oh my God, I can't believe it. I'm not even going to, listen, that's a whole other conversation for another video. We're not going to get mad about that. We're just going to be looking in the hip-hop category, and we're going to see, are the Grammys as bad as people say they are, or have they made some good selections over the year? Let's find out right now as we look back at the first ever recipient of the Best Rap Album Award with Naughty by Nature's Poverty's Paradise. Now, we're going to obviously be comparing this to albums that came out in the year 1995, because that's how the Grammys work. The 2023 show looks at 2022 albums, and that rule applies to every other Grammy show that has ever happened. So you had an album like Tupac's Me Against the World. You had an album like Mobb Deep's The Infamous. And of course, you had two of the best Wu-Tang solo albums in Only Built for Cuban Links and Liquid Swords. So while, listen, Naughty by Nature, don't take this the wrong way. I like you. You're underrated. OPP is a classic. Tretch is an underrated lyricist. Naughty by Nature is a good group. Let's just put that into perspective. Naughty by Nature is a good group, and they are definitely underrated in the scheme of everything. But you do not deserve this award. So already, the Grammys are mid. Already, they have made a mid pick. And I'm going to be putting this into the C tier because, again, Poverty's Paradise is not a bad body of work. It's just not Album of the Year material. So now we're going to be going to the next year, 1997, which obviously, again, is going to be comparing 1996 albums. And 1996, first of all, is an all-time great year for hip-hop. You have Nas's It Was Written, Jay-Z's Reasonable Doubt, Tupac dropped two albums with Not Me Against the World, All Eyes on Me, and The 7 Day Theory. DJ Shadow dropped Introducing, The Roots dropped Illadelph Half-Life. There are so many great records that dropped in 1996, so you'd really have to try to mess it up. And they did not mess it up. They picked Fugees, The Score. This is a great album. To this day, this is an amazing body of work. The chemistry that Lauren, Wyclef, and Probs have, the way they were able to blend a multitude of genres and styles together, and just the chemistry they possess, it's beautiful. This album is amazing. This is a certified hip-hop classic, and this is actually a really good album to pick for Best Rap Album. This is an S-tier place. This is an S-tier pick. This is perfect placement. I understand it, and in such a competitive year, they ended up making a great choice. Question is, will they keep doing that? Looking at the winner for Best Rap Album in the year 1998, we have Puff Daddy's No Way Out. And I do want to look back at the actual context of this award because I do think it's important. The year 1997 was a very turbulent time for hip-hop. Obviously, Tupac passed away, Biggie passed away, and there really wasn't a lot of huge mainstream albums coming out at the time. But the albums that did come out were all pretty much from the same camp and were all pretty much from the same artists. You had Puff Daddy's No Way Out, which is obviously a bad boy release, features Biggie and Jay-Z. And the other albums that came out in 1997 that were huge were Biggie's Life After Death and Jay-Z's Volume 1. So out of those three records, I do think No Way Out is the worst, although it's my favorite out of the three. I love this album. It really got me into hip-hop. There are so many great moments in terms of Victory with Biggie and Busta Rhymes, Young G's with Jay-Z and Biggie. The collaborations on this album are amazing. Obviously, it contains I'll Be Missing You, which was Puff's touching tribute to Biggie Smalls. But I do think it's the worst body of work compared to the other two. So overall, I really don't get how this wins over something like Life After Death. I don't even know, was Puffy happy that it won over Life After Death? I just don't agree with this. I don't think it's a great pick, although I kind of understand it. But I'm still going to put this into the C tier as it's a little confusing. Next up in our ranking, we're looking at the 1999 winner, Jay-Z's Volume 2. And overall, this is a dope album. Contains a lot of hits like Hard Knock Life, Can I Get a What, Money Cash Hoes. Like, there's a lot of classics on this record. And it is Jay-Z's highest selling album with over 5 million copies sold. But 1998 also had the release of DMX's It's Dark and Hell is Hot, Outkast's Aquemini, Most Def and Talib Kweli are Black Stars. So, I don't know, Grammys. I don't agree with this pick, but I do think it's better than, the 1996 and 1998 winners. So I'm going to be putting this in B tier. You did an all right job. And it's Jay-Z. How could you be mad that Jay-Z wins anything? Looking at the winner for the year 2000, we have Eminem's major label debut, the Slim Shady LP. And while 1999 had two definitively better albums and Most Def's Black on Both Sides and The Roots Things Fall Apart, I understand why they gave it to the Slim Shady LP. And it's a Slim Shady LP. It's an awesome album. It's a hilarious album. It's a dark album. And it really did reinvent and redefine what hip-hop was at the time. So overall, I think this is dope. And I'm going to be putting the Slim Shady LP into A tier. So now, going into the 2000s, going into the records that came out in the 2000s, I'm saying, these are the first 5 picks. So you got an S tier, you got an A tier, you got a B tier, and you got 2 C tiers. So they've been all over the place so far. So let's see if the Grammys get any better as we turn the century. So the 2001 winner is the Marshall Mathers LP. And while the year 2000 is an all-time great year for hip-hop with an all-time great list of albums that came out, this is a perfect winner. And I'm going to be putting this in S tier. I mean, if you want an album that delivers in terms of quality, storytelling, atmosphere, just an overall one-of-a-kind feeling. It has this eerie feeling, but it's also kind of funny and charming at the same time. If you want a record like that, the Marshall Mathers LP is a masterclass. And then, looking on the commercial side of things, this is a diamond album, so it makes sense why it wins, and it deserves that, rightfully so. And now we're going to be looking at the 2002 winner, which is also an album from the year 2000, but the reason why it won in 2002 is because it missed the cutoff date, which is usually September of 2001 or September of 2000, and then that's for the 2001 award. So it missed the cutoff date, so it won the next year. But regardless, so now we'd be comparing Stankonia to, classics like The Blueprint and Stillmatic, but I still think it is a better record, and I think this is amazing. I think they really did make an amazing selection here. I'm going to be also putting this in S tier. So that's 2 S tier albums in a row. How could the Grammys mess this up? I mean, they're doing great. They're starting to really understand what the hip-hop category represents and what should win. So now we're going to be looking at 2003, and we have another really good pick in the Eminem show. I mean, 2002 had some other great albums from groups like The Roots and Clips. I do think Eminem definitely does deserve this one, and I'm also going to be putting this in the S tier. Well deserved. So that's 3 S tiers in a row, and I think it's going to get better. I think it may get better as we go to 2004, and we have the commercial, the double album, and the overall just experience that's the juggernaut of Speakerboxxx and The Love Below. I mean, I talked about this album a little bit earlier, but this album's a double album. It shows off Big Boi's potential as a solo artist. It shows off Andre 3000's masterclass as a solo artist. It's a lot of damn fun, and it's got a lot of really good hits. Now, 2003 had some other really good albums like Jay-Z's The Black Album, and 50 Cent's Get Rich or Die Trying, which, if you ask some people, I'm sure they're livid that, the dude singing in a wig screaming, "Hey, y'all," won over them. But this, in my opinion, is the better body of work. So I'm also going to be putting this in S tier. So the Grammys are on fire right now. What is that? 4 S tier albums in a row. And guess what? It's only getting better as we go into the year 2005. Kanye West's College Dropout takes it home. And listen, 2004 had an album like Mad Villainy, which is undisputably a better album than the College Dropout, but still, I'm not expecting the Grammys to pick something as underground, as abstract as Mad Villainy. So picking the College Dropout, I think, is amazing. And that's another S tier. That's another S tier. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 S tier albums in a row. And guess what? They're about to get a 6th with Late Registration, which took home the Grammy in 2006. I mean, listen, 2005 definitely had more competition than 2004 with records like Commons B and, what's the other album? Games, Documentary, and Lil Wayne's The Carter 2. So, like, there definitely is competition stacking up. But still, I think this is fantastic placement. And this is a huge W. So, honestly, the Grammys, they've done a pretty good job so far in the 2000s. How could they screw this up? Oh, wait. 2007, Ludacris's Release Therapy. I've always found this as like the most random pick the Grammys ever made in their early part of their career. I mean, I guess aside from Naughty by Nature's Poverty's Paradise, Ludacris, obviously, I mean, he doesn't get as much love now, but he was a huge MC in the 2000s. I mean, besides Lil Wayne and Outkast, probably the biggest Southern MC, period. But I don't know, man. I don't know if Ludacris should have won this award. It's an all right selection, but 2006 also had an album like Clips's Hell Hath No Fury, which is an all-time great body of work. But overall, I mean, in 2006, I feel like hip hop really started to divide into kind of like the mainstream ringtone side, and then you started to get this like really abstract, really creative underground with albums like Piece of Strange from Cunning Linguists and Jay Dilla's Donuts, of course. So I kind of understand how random the pick of this is, although I really don't know how you don't give it to Clips. So overall, I don't really like this winner, but I don't think it's as confusing as, Poverty's Paradise considering the competition. So I'm going to be putting Release Therapy in B. But it's still, it's an okay pick. We haven't really got to like the abundantly awful picks, but it definitely, you see, we had all of these classics, all of these genre defining classics from 2001, 2002, 2003, 2004, 2005, 2006. We get to 2007 and they lost us. It was going to happen. It was going to happen inevitably. But now we're going to be going into the year 2008. We have Kanye West's Graduation. Now, similar to kind of how I felt about the Slim Shady LP, I understand why Graduation won. It definitely deserved to win, but I don't think this is the best album from its respective year, even in the mainstream. I think Jay-Z's American Gangster is a much better body of work. So I'm not going to put this in S, as I don't think it has that same unanimous and just absolute marvelous qualities that some of the other albums in S tier have. But I'm still going to be putting Graduation in the A tier, as I think it's a super great pick. And I can't disagree with it. I can't really knock it. Now, going into 2008, we have Lil Wayne's The Carter 3. And 2008 is kind of one of those years for hip hop. It was pretty weak in terms of its entirety, but you did have some good albums like T.I.'s Paper Trail, Q-Tip's The Renaissance, and Kanye's 808s and Heartbreaks, of course. But Carter 3 is definitely the best album out of all of those. And it's the freaking Carter 3. This, again, is a genre-defining album. And it's a great record. So I'm going to be putting this in the S tier, as, again, this is just a great choice. This is a fantastic choice, and I can't disagree with this. There is nothing that should have won it over the Carter 3. Now, we're pretty much about to enter the 2010s, and I think this is where the Grammys really starts to get very rocky. It starts to get a little confusing, and that all starts in 2010 with Eminem's 2009 record, Relapse. Now, listen, Kid Cudi's Man on the Moon could have won this. Even Jay-Z's The Blueprint 3, I think, would have been a better choice. But Relapse, I just don't think it's a really warranted win. I think they gave it to it just because, the voters probably said, oh, it's Eminem. Eminem was good back then, and Eminem's back, so it has to be good. I really don't think that, well, I know the people don't really listen to the music, but I really don't think they knew what they were picking, and I do think this is one of the weaker choices they made. So overall, I'm going to be putting this within the C tier. And I know a lot of M fans, this is the point where they're going to start barking at me. They're going to start getting mad. But listen, I mean, if you want, fight me in the comments. I think Relapse is a solid album. I think in retrospect, it was overhated. And I do think it's one of Eminem's better records. But album of the year, I mean, that's steep. That's a steep claim. And I just don't agree with that. With the 2011 winner being Eminem's Recovery, This is another selection that I really don't like, and I think is one of the worst selections they've made to this point. And again, I understand this album's importance commercially speaking, but as an actual body of work, it's just an all right record. I mean, you had a lot of better albums that came out in 2010 that could have won this, and Kanye's My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy will go on to win in 2012. So we'll save that as its own juggernaut because it can't be talked about in this realm because it wins the next year after. But still, 2010 had a lot of good albums that were mainstream recognized, that sold well, and that could have won this. I mean, Rick Ross's Teflon Don is a lot better of an album. The Roots is How I Got Over, or even Big Boy's Sir Lucius Left Foot. I think all three of those albums would have been infinite better choices, and even something like Man on the Moon 2 from Cuddy could have won this. So overall, I don't really think this is a great choice, and I'm going to be putting this in D tier, as I really do think this is the worst choice the Grammys have made so far, and I think this is where they really started to make choices based off name recognition and kind of just overall buzzing hype, as opposed to who's really making the best bodies of work. So overall, the 2000s were a good period for the Grammys. I mean, you can see the S tier is bloated, but it's going to start to get a little rocky, I think. But not yet, as 2011, or 2012, excuse me, these years are absolutely the worst to talk about in a video because I know when these albums came out. Like, I know that, like, I know the back of my hand, but I'm bumping all of them up, and then which ones get bumped up 2 years. It just gets really confusing when you're just talking about it off the dome. But our 2012 winner is My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. That's obviously S tier. I'm not going to argue about that. Obviously, it's one of the best albums ever recorded. And I mean, 2011 did have some other albums like The Roots Undone, which may be arguably better, but we're not going to sit here and complain about My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy winning anything. Now, looking at the best rap album for 2013, Drake's Take Care won it. And overall, I think there are some other albums that maybe were better, but I don't have a problem with this taking it home at all. So I'm going to be putting this in the A tier. It's Drizzy. I'm not going to complain. Now going into 2014, the infamous year of the heist, where it won over Drake's Nothing Was the Same, Jay-Z's Magna Carta Holy Grail, Kendrick's Good Kid Mad City, and Kanye West's Yeezus. Now, I think this was the most talked about best rap album winner for a long time until one of the other albums we'll get to. And, while this album did have some hits, while it did spark a little bit of a buzz, this was awful. Like, for even this to be nominated, I'm sorry, it's an abundantly awful choice. And I think everybody in hip hop knows that, but it's different. If you wanted to nominate something like Thrift Shop for best rap song, I can understand that. If you want to take one particular moment and talk about, that being a hit song. While these other albums have songs that come together and culminate into an experience, if you want to make the best song award something that's really a piece that stands on its own that everybody knows, that's a different story. But when you're picking albums based on their best songs or their most popular songs, because that's really what I'm kind of referring to, that's where it gets crazy. And I think this is really where the Grammys start to lose me. The Heist shouldn't have won this. It does not deserve it in any way. This is awful. I'm putting this in F tier. Like, there is no logical explanation for the Heist winning best rap album other than we are only looking at who sells records and who's hot. I mean, Macklemore literally apologized to Kendrick for winning. He apologized to Kendrick for winning. Like, that is obscure. Do you know how something has to be for, like, somebody to win an award and to apologize to the next person for winning? Could you imagine if, like, LeBron won the championship and he apologized to Steph Curry for winning? Like, that is just something that never happens, and it only happens in an award show as just messed up as this one. Going into 2015, we are stuck with another Eminem record that definitely did not deserve to win, but it won because it's an Eminem record. Now listen, the nominees for this category this year were very odd. You had Schoolboy Q's Oxymoron, which is dope. Definitely could have won it. Definitely would have been a really cool album to give it to. Then you had Wiz Khalifa's Black Hollywood, which It's all right, I guess. Wiz Khalifa kind of was starting to fall off at this point in my eyes. Then you had Common's Nobody's Smiling, which was a dope album, kind of an interesting pick, but it was still a dope record and one of Common's best in the second half of his career. Then you had Iggy Azalea's The New Classic, and then you have the one that should have won out of all these nominations, because now we're at the point where there are so many albums that could have been the potential winner. I'm really only looking at the nominees just to try to be a little more fair, but you had Childish Gambino's Because the Internet, which is an all-time classic and would have been such a good album to pick. But nope, they gave it to the Eminem Marshall Mathers LP2. And listen, this album's okay. It's a good album. Like, it is a good album. I'd give it like a 7 out of 10. But the 7 out of 10 should not be in the conversation for the best rap album when there are marginally better albums that came out in both the end of 2013 and in 2014. This is a confusing one, and I'm going to be putting this in the C tier, which almost may start to be, the new tier that's getting filled up. So, 2016, Kendrick Lamar's To Pimp a Butterfly. This is an automatic S tier. I don't really think we have to put much thought into this. This is undisputed in my opinion. Really, the crazy thing is that they gave Taylor Swift, and I like Taylor Swift. I'm not here to bash Taylor Swift. I'm not here to say she's made, because I think she's a good artist. But they gave Taylor Swift's 1989 the win for Album of the Year over To Pimp a Butterfly, which is, again, one of those selections that hip-hop is always talking about, and rightfully so. Now we're going to be going on into the 2017 winner, Chance the Rapper's Coloring Book. Now, I will say this about this one. It was dope that they gave it to a mixtape. It was dope that they gave it to a smaller artist like Chance, who wasn't really, he was very hyped up at the time because of what he did musically, but they gave it to an artist that didn't have like this super crazy hit and no body of work to back it up for, or, an artist who was just selling off of drama or some sort of controversy or outside factor. So that was dope. But at the same time, I think an album like The Life of Pablo should have won over this, or even like The Tribe Called Quest, Thank You, We Got It From Here, which wasn't even nominated. So overall, this is an okay pick, but I'm only going to put this in B tier. As similar to Ludacris and Jay-Z, I get why you gave it the win, but I don't really agree. Next up, we have the 2018 Grammys, and this year we had 4 really good albums nominated up against Kendrick Lamar's Damn, and Jay-Z's 444, Tyler's Flower Boy, Rhapsody's Layla's Wisdom, and Migos' Culture. And while I do think 444 definitely should have won this year, I understand why Kendrick won, and I'm definitely not mad at it. So I'm going to be putting Damn in A tier. And now we're going on to the 2019 Grammys, which are unanimously the worst. This was the worst winner they have ever picked. It was crazy. This is just crazy. Like, they invited Mac Miller's family here after he passed away to disrespect him. They disrespected Travis Scott after dropping the biggest marvel in music at the time. They disrespected Nipsey Hussle, who really completed his musical journey at the time, going from somebody who was selling mixtapes and finding these crazy marketing schemes in terms of how to sell his music to blow up, and now has Kendrick Lamar and like Puff Daddy on his album. And then, Pusha T, who just put together one of the most concise and pristine and most glamorous albums in Daytona, and they gave it to Invasion of Privacy. Not even considering any of the other albums that could have won, just looking at the nominees they actually put up, this is awful. This is an F tier. This is an embarrassment. It's disgusting. I'm still mad about this one to this day. To this day, I'm mad about that. Now we're going to be going into 2020. And they picked Tyler, the Creator's Igor, which I think is a fantastic choice. I'm going to be putting that in S tier. So, honestly, when you look at the S tier, like, the Grammys have been pretty on point, but you also do see a trend where they pick the most popular artists to make the most popular albums. There's not really any surprising picks in there. Like, it would be objectively wrong to not pick Eminem's best albums or Outkast's best albums or Wayne or Kanye or Kendrick. 2021 was one of the weirdest 2021 was one of the weirdest years for the Grammys in terms of the nominations they picked for this category, as it almost seemed like they were just trying to get their image back in the eyes of hip-hop heads. They picked Royce da 5'9", D Smoke, Alfredo from Freddie Gibbs and the Alchemist, of course, Jay Electronica's A Written Testimony, and Nas's King's Disease. And while those were all like really cool picks, and it was dope to see those artists getting love at the Grammys, it was just weird, and it kind of felt like they were trying to appeal to us just to make us stay tuned in for a while. But what I will say picking Nas as King's Disease was definitely awesome after all of the years of Nas not ever winning a Grammy. But at the same time, I don't believe in this whole principle where, like, you know, since we didn't give Nas an award all of these years, we should give him an award for an album that's not as good as the albums we should have gave it to him for. Does that make sense? You understand what I'm saying? Like, Alfredo was the better album. If this was Alfredo winning, it would be in a higher tier. But because of Nas, I'm only going to put this in B tier. As again, just like those other albums in B, I understand why they won. I somewhat agree with the sentiment of letting them win, but I don't fully see it. And I think there were better records that they could have given it to. Now, looking at the final 2 years, the most recent 2 years of the Grammys, we had pretty good selections. In 2021 or 2022, again, this year stuff with the Grammys is just like the most annoying thing to talk about. But the 2022 selections they made were really good. They had Donda, they had the Off-Season, King's Disease 2, Certified Lover Boy, which was a little bit of a hit miss in there, but I still understand they wanted, the Kanye versus Drake, the Drake versus Cole, all that, and they had Tyler's Call Me If You Get Lost. So I thought they did a really good job at the nominations that year. And picking Tyler's Call Me If You Get Lost was amazing. It was also awesome. Tyler was on tour. Like, he didn't even show up to the awards. But picking Call Me If You Get Lost was an amazing choice. And in terms of what the best albums in the mainstream were, this was a great choice. I do think Donda is a little bit of a better album, which is one of the hotter takes I have nowadays. But still, I think it's a great choice. And I'm going to be putting this in A tier because I don't think Call Me If You Get Lost has the notoriety or is as good as any of those albums in S tier. That's just an elite group of records. But still, this is an amazing pick. And now finally, we have the most recent winner of the award, which thank God, I'm making this video, and it's not God's did, and not God's did, it's not God did, it's not I Never Liked You, it's not Come Home's the Kids Miss You, although I thought it would have been really cool if Pusha T won with It's Almost Dry. I thought that would have been a really cool moment that would have really opened up the floodgates for more albums like that to win, because, again, Kendrick Lamar winning awards, it's kind of expected. He's won 3 awards. Every major album he's dropped since Good Kid, Mad City has won a Grammy, and it's almost becoming, it seems like the Grammys do this, where they find artists that they just have like a very strong brand name. They're liked by critics, and they're also very popular with fans, and they just kind of stick to giving them stuff. You see it with Kanye, you see it with Outkast, you see it with Eminem, you see it with Tyler, the Creator. Like, this seems like it's a reoccurring trend when you really look at it. It kind of shows the trends over the years. So I think it's a great choice. I'm going to be putting this in the S tier because this is a top 2 album of 2022. Oh my God. These years, man, they're driving me crazy. This is a top tier album though, and it definitely deserves the love. So there you have it. This is the list of every single Grammy album winner, best rap album winner in a tier list. They're not ranked individually because that would look a lot different, but here you have the general premise. So overall, F tier is just awful. It makes no sense. The C tiers, the B tiers are a little iffy. Everything else beyond that is pretty good. So when you look at the Grammys track record, I do think they've done a good enough job. Like, this is the thing. It makes sense why these artists like Jay-Z and Kendrick Lamar keep showing up to the awards show every year. Because, they're benefiting their platform. They are doing a good enough job to generally give the best albums their love. But when you look at the lower tiers, you really start to see the problem, and it's that they don't know what they're doing half of the time. And to be the biggest award show in music and to give the best rap album winner to albums that just have no being there in terms of, Eminem's later albums or Invasion of Privacy or The Heist, or just kind of like these very middle of the line albums like Volume 2 and Release Therapy and Coloring Book and King's Disease. It just shows that, generally speaking, the Grammys are very hit or miss. It's almost about a 50-50 split in terms of the good picks they've made and the bad picks they've made. And the diversity within those picks is not very great. It tends to go to the same batch of artists year over year. So overall, the Grammys have done the bare minimum in terms of giving generational artists who are not just critically acclaimed, but are, commercial juggernauts like Kendrick, Tyler, Eminem, Outkast, Lil Wayne, Jay-Z. They have given those artists their fair share of love over the years. But when you look at the Grammys board as the encompassing voice of what the best record is in hip hop. It's not very reflective of what the truth is, and it's not very reflective of what the best art coming out is. There you have it. Let me know, do you agree with my ranking? What would you change? Did I miss heavily on any of these? And let me know if you want to see more tier list rankings in this raw and uncut format. Thank you all for watching. Mr. Fantastic, fantastic hip hop. Have a great day. And hit that subscribe button if you enjoyed that video.